All right, shalom, shalom, boker tov, erev tov, lekulam, lechulam. We're going live for the first time this year. Happy New Year, Shana Tova. Wait for some people to come on in. I know it's different times all over the world, but this is 20 tips for 2020. 20 Hebrew speaking tips to get you moving forward in this new year. Boker tov lekulam. Also, just wanted to mention this. This will be replayed too. So if you guys are here now, you'll also be able to catch the replay a little bit later, just in case. Hey guys, come on in. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Uchim habayim. We're talking about 20 Hebrew tips today that are going to help you move forward with your speaking and start the new year off right. Because, you know, what if you started every conversation in Hebrew with this confidence, with this ability to show people that you are an advanced speaker? Or what if you just started every conversation and people assumed that you knew what you were talking about? They didn't switch to English, they didn't switch to a different language. People just took you seriously. What if you could command the conversation? What if you could give off the right first impression every single time? Right? This is the goal I want to share with you this year, because this feeling, this confident feeling, the feeling that the people really think I'm from here or have a background with this language or this culture. It's something that goes a long way and doesn't even require you to learn grammar and vocabulary. You end up finding that the pronunciation is kind of a more important thing than the whole rest of the picture. But we know there are also problems when it comes to this whole process, right? We don't even know where to start sometimes. We have limited resources. What do we watch first? What do we listen to? Who do we ask? And what are the techniques that people are doing? I feel like, sometimes there's some people that know what to do, and I'm just sitting here like, just doing everything I've been doing. So what are those techniques? What are those processes or thought processes that people are employing when they're at an advanced level? And I've gone through this in kind of a backwards way. If you don't know me, my name is Ruben Adery. I'm a dialect coach here in Los Angeles. And the way that I learned Hebrew, which is my fifth language, is a little bit backwards. And I learned the pronunciation first. As a kid, I was always just imitating voices and voice actors. And although my father's from Israel, I never really spoke to him every day. We didn't speak Hebrew growing up, and so I had to learn it as an adult. But I did have family with accents, and they were talking with the Israeli accent, and it's sticking in my brain. So I use these sounds to kind of filter all the Hebrew words that I'm still learning, vocabulary included, grammar included. Comment here, guys, where you're watching from. Just you're not alone here. This is not just a lecture. You guys can ask questions and interrupt me too. I have a lot to share with you. I'm going to move a little bit quickly, but please let me know what you guys are thinking, what you guys are curious about, and hopefully as we get into things today, you'll start opening your mind to other possibilities. So feel free to comment here. Let me know, where are you guys? Where are you guys watching from? And what level of Hebrew do you have? What are you struggling with? We'll talk about those things today. And we'll also have time at the end to answer some of your questions. And stick around to the end, because I have a special surprise for those of you who are watching this video. You'll be able to see something a little bit behind the scenes. What's going on, Dan? From Virginia. I love it. Janet, how are ya? Makore from Memphis. Fantastic. Shalom, shalom from Sweden. Emma's coming in. Nice. I love it that we're still tuning in even late in the evening. Thanks for being here today. Lawrence from Paris. Fantastic. This is a chance for everyone to get ahead a little bit today, and we'll have a whole hour to spend with this stuff. And I'm going to share with you exactly what I've gone through to master 5 total languages and counting, and be able to create the right first impression when starting the conversation. So, nice. Astrid from Holland, fantastic. Good to see you guys here. I'm going to get into the mix. I'm going to explain how we're going to break down these 20 tips and just let you know how you can take action. But most of these are pretty self-explanatory in that the tip includes the action or what to do, but I'll go into them a little bit more if necessary. The 20 tips are also broken down into 4 different categories. This is how my brain works, to give you an idea. So the first 5 tips are going to deal with general linguistic understanding. Right, so I'm a linguist by trade, I suppose, by training as well. I specialize in phonetics and phonology, and so there are certain things that I know that I want you guys to know before we get into things. The next 5 tips will be about habits I think you guys should be forming. The next 5 will be kind of general Hebrew techniques and tips, and then the final 5 will be specific, actual Hebrew things. You'll notice they'll apply to words in Hebrew. Nice, Pauline. Oh wow, coming from all over the world. So we'll get into things. Just not waste time. Tachlis, as we say, and start with these linguistic understanding tips. If there's any questions, just let me know in the comments. And if you're watching this as a replay, you can still comment and ask questions after the fact. Hopefully we'll have a chance to respond to you as soon as possible. The first tip, if you guys are taking notes and numbering these, this is number 1. They're in no particular order, although these are the most important tips. I could probably spend a whole day talking about these 20, so allow me to go through in a more efficient manner. How about that? So number 1 is that your accent in Hebrew is a combination of your pronunciation and your word choice, the words that you decide or you're going to say. And so if you're making a mistake, or if someone recognizes you're not from Israel, it's usually because of mispronunciation, right? You pronounced a sound wrong or differently, or you chose a word or a phrasing that didn't seem as natural or as probable as it might be to a native speaking ear, or native hearing ear, to a native ear. So when it comes to pronunciation, we can also break that down into other components. So you can talk about individual sounds. It might be a rhythmic issue, linking words together, prosody or prosody, which has to do with more like intonation or pitch changes mixed with rhythm. But these are little facets of the language that many people don't understand. They're like, oh, I just don't know how to say that word, when really there's a lot of things going on, maybe underneath. And the word choice can also be broken down into grammar or isolated vocabulary. Do you know how to say chair or frying pan or cherry, or do you not know that word? In many cases, you can just look those up, but there are also idiomatic usages. So you have things that are just fixed. You have to say these words as they are, and sometimes we don't really know that. Jonathan from Yerushalayim, what's going on? We have this general understanding that, oh, it's my accent, or it's my pronunciation, but not always do we think about word choice and sounding natural, and the difference between what you learn in a book maybe and what you hear on the streets. So that's the first one. Later in this week, I'm going to share a document with you guys, an image that's like a flow chart, a visual representation of what I just described. That's the first one. Number 2, understand that letters, individual letters, are not the same as sounds. And there are some letters that might have 2, 3, 4, or more different sounds, or allophones, we call them, that would be pronounced in different environments. So this also has to do with transliteration, which is a big thing from Hebrew to English. If you know that Hebrew obviously has a different alphabet, we're always going to use the letter T to transliterate Taf and Tet. We're going to use R for Resh, maybe CH or a H for chafchet, and you might not realize, hey, the T's are not the same as the T's in English. Just because it's written with a T doesn't mean that it is only one sound, and it doesn't mean that it is R. I mean, I'm saying R as in English, but it is the T that you use in your native language. We have to try to make that a thing to question, to be skeptical about. So letters and sounds, different things. All right? Let me know if you get this stuff. Let me know. You can give me like a thank you. You can give me a mind blown. Anything that you guys want to share to show your emotions. But that's it. Number 3, we keep going. Let me know if there's questions about these. 3, both vowels and consonant sounds might change slightly depending on the environment. And mostly what we're talking about here are word initial, so sounds that begin the word or the syllable. We have medial or in the middle of vowel sounds in most cases, and we have a final position. In most cases, this is what we're talking about. So in Hebrew, it might be the end of a word. It might be a consonant before another consonant. So just consider that. Resh is an example of this. Taf, tet. You might see that these are pronounced slightly differently than you would in your native language at the beginning, the middle, and the end. They change and they often have variations. So the second and third tip kind of go hand in hand. They all kind of go hand in hand. There's no, chronological order you need to follow. But definitely important to know that sounds change depending on their environment. Right, so consider that. Vowels in particular, you might find that a vowel is easier to say before a certain consonant, but every time I hear it before this consonant, I just can't get it out. Or ah is easier for me than e, etc. So consider those things and understand what position the sound is in as you're trying to pronounce it. Number 4, memorize verbs and adjectives that grammatically require another preposition. For example, we have all these preposition, these combinations. Certain verbs take et, right? Lirot, et, oti, otcha, otam, etc. Some verbs take lamed, or bet, or min, or all these different prepositions. And you should know if there is a grammatical relationship. We know that prepositions have their own usages as well, but many cases we don't really make that tie. And that's a huge advantage if you know that this preposition goes with this word. Every time I say this, I'm going to have to say me after it. And many of these are also different from English. They're potentially different from your native language. So make sure you're not just translating literally, that these ties and these collocations, as we call them, are confirmed. And we can give you more tips later on in this list to figure out how to do that. So grammatically understanding the connections between words. We'll talk way less about grammar, but I had to slip this in here because linguistically it's relevant. And the last thing, which I think is maybe the most important of this group, aside from just knowing that accents are combinations of pronunciation and word choice, is there are 2 different types of speaking. I call them prescriptive or descriptive pronunciation. Prescriptive and descriptive. You might have heard these terms about grammar, but we're talking here about pronunciation just for a moment. So when we use the term prescriptive, we're really talking about what's supposed to be pronounced. How is it supposed to be? And that, of course, is potentially subjective, but not really. There is a right way, and usually this happens when we speak slowly, when we speak to foreigners, we kind of overdo it. In English, we might say, "Welcome to our country," when no one really pronounces those words that way. So consider that prescriptive pronunciation as something that's going to be sounding overpronounced, and the descriptive pronunciation, descriptive, as something that we were observing people are saying over and over, even though it might not be grammatical, even though it might not be the perfect version of it. If you're noticing a change, it's probably because some people are actually just changing and the language is evolving, and it's happening in front of our faces. So make sure you understand that those things are going to be different. We want to aim for the descriptive pronunciation. In these lessons, we're talking more about descriptive pronunciation than prescriptive, because we want you to sound like a native speaker. We want you to build confidence, and we can't really do that without understanding how it's spoken, how it's said, even if we're sticklers for the rules. So, I'm just going back and seeing these questions too. These are great questions. Emma says, I think about the changes in sound and spelling that can... Okay. Are there rules for when to use taf or tet, shin, samech, chet, chaf? These are great questions. We'll keep the tips going, but I promise to answer these questions towards the end, because they might even be answered within this list of tips. All right, so prescriptive versus descriptive. Hopefully you get the idea. Descriptive is what we're going for. We want to sound like natives, even though they might break the official rules. But those are the 5 linguistic understanding tips to get into things today. And the next 5 tips have to do with certain habits that are nice to generate as a language learner in general, but just really quick, Janet's question. Janet asked, are there any tips for memorizing which prepositions go with which verbs? Just a quick tip about that is that I often will translate them into English. So a classic mistake or a comment that I've heard from my family members is to say, Ruben, enjoy from the weekend, enjoy from your vacation, enjoy from. And whenever they say a misuse of grammar in English, I always keep that translated. In my head, I'm thinking that it's enjoy from the weekend. תהנו מהסוף השבוע. תהנה meha. So the idea that there's a min or a mem there is something that I translate from English. Yes, you'd have to hear Israelis mess up English or make mistakes, but one tip of many is to translate them, especially the ones that are not matching from language to language, translate those wrong. Think of them in your head as the wrong thing. I want to show to you, and you would say, להראות לך or לך. So you're thinking, I want to show to you instead of to show you. It might help. Aaron, hey, what's going on? Welcome. Julieta from England. Good to be here, guys, with you. Good to be with you, guys. Keep it going here. 5 habits to share that are just generally related to things that will move you forward and set you up for success. The first one is, it may be obvious, but find a mentor or mentors. It doesn't have to be a mentor, but maybe a person or a group of people with whom you have trust and confidence. They don't even have to be native speakers. It could be someone who would just understand the difference. It's great if they're native speakers. Also good if they know your native language too. And you can just say, hey, how do I say this? What's the best way to say what I want to translate here? It's also good if this same person or people have a shared goal of helping the other with the language. Or language partners, conversation partners are great for this. Couch surfers and travel friends are great for this. And it's a great way to stay in touch with people who you met for a week or a day on a trip, and you just end up keeping in touch because of the language. You have some Israeli friends who you're like, oh, what am I going to say to them? How am I going to keep in touch? Use the fact that you're learning the language and practicing as the connection, if you don't already. And make sure, continuing here with the tips, because they're all kind of jumbled together, but I want to share them in order. The second of these tips is to develop a clear awareness of the things that you are struggling with, and the things that you already are doing very well. Many people that I work with that come to me and say, I have a horrible accent, I don't know how to do this, they're forgetting how good a lot of things are about their pronunciation and their use in general. We don't give ourselves enough credit. We need that feedback to say, you are doing a great job with those sounds. and we're always thinking about the negative stuff. Oh, I don't say that well. Every time I say that, they switch to English. And those things you should pay attention to. If you notice that someone's switching every time you say one word or one sound, or your name or your phone number, then you might want to check yourself and say, maybe I should work on my phone number. Maybe I should pronounce my name differently. Maybe not that, but maybe this is going to give me a sense of clarity. And this mentor, this person that you trust, can absolutely help with that. And you want to find those things out because, to be honest, there are only a finite number of sounds in Hebrew. There's only there's maybe an infinite combination of words that you can say, but there are many of the same problems you're going to experience and go through. And if someone can catch them, if we can get feedback, the more often we can get feedback, the more we can understand our own use of language. Especially if this is your second language, if Hebrew is your second language and not a third or a fourth, and you're really kind of struggling to figure this out, having the mentor, having someone that you trust, a friend, like a family member even, and compiling lists of sounds, words, phrases that you're struggling with, and things that every time you say, it comes out perfect, right? Use those to launch yourself into the conversation. And then work on the other things in the background. But if you slip up, if you mess up a Reish pronunciation, hey, you're working on it. You know about it. You can't really lose face because it's not a new thing. It shouldn't get you down because you already have the technique in place. Aaron, my man, what's going on? The Reish video about pronunciation of Reish is really helpful. Toda rabba lecha. It's such a fun technique or at least sound to talk about. The techniques about Reish. Hopefully you guys had a chance to see that as well. There are different ways to go about doing it, but I just like to share, creative ways to get to the same ending point. And we know that our brains are all really different and creative, and so if we can make a connection for you, then all the better. So I'm glad that you guys enjoyed that. I hope it clicked for many of you as well. Let's keep going with the habits. The third habit here that I think is important is a big part of Judaism, if you're into that, is asking the right questions. We just feel like, I think as language learners, I'm still learning other languages too. I'm a beginner in certain languages, and so I know the whole process, and I get to the point now where as a beginner, I feel like I have power. There is something really beautiful about being a beginner in a certain language, or generally speaking, in any physical, exercise or sports. The general feeling of ignorance combined with this willingness and this drive to adapt, it always leads to positive growth. When you're willing to just make a change and you're feeling like, I don't know anything, it's a really good opportunity to make habits and develop habits that stick. So really important to ask questions, and it could be to this mentor, it could be to this person, but you could also be the kind of person who just asks questions a lot. To native speakers, to the person at the post office, to the clerk at the retail store, and you're just kind of confirming things. Oh, is that how you say that? Oh, is it better to say this or that? Which one sounds more clear? And you give them examples. It's a habit to be almost feeling like you can ask a question instead of oh gosh, admitting that you don't know the answer. It's humbling in a way too, but it boosts, it helps to, maybe it stops the conversation for a second, but in general, people will understand that you're practicing and that you generally are in this process. And people usually want to help. Most people, not everybody. But if they're seeing that you're asking questions and they know that you're in this learning process, they might even reach out and offer something like personalized feedback. Who knows? Question. Wilen, that's hard to pronounce, but I will hope I did that justice. Should I pay attention to possible different pronunciations of words in ancient Hebrew as opposed to modern Hebrew? I'm thinking of the Torah, Tanakh, for example. Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's kind of the same, a little bit of the same deal between prescriptive and descriptive pronunciation. Many of you guys here, you can raise your hands or give some kind of emoji if you're studying biblical Hebrew, Tanakh, or the Torah. You'll hear a lot of the same things. It's not all different. Most of the differences come in the form of word choice. bereshit instead of batchala. But the pronunciation is still a thing. You might also be influenced by different traditions, Ashkenazim or Sfaradi. You might see there are certain teachers from different places that use different sounds. And so absolutely pay attention to those differences and consider the old Hebrew, the ancient Hebrew. Ancient. Modern Hebrew might be changing a little bit here. And that's not to say that you can't pronounce words, resh with a flipped R. Ani rotze, rotza. I think that in many cases that sounds nice, sounds clear. But you get to choose. And if you know all the things, if you're completely aware of the biblical Hebrew pronunciations and the modern Hebrew pronunciations, it's just like knowing the correct version or the grammatical version and the ungrammatical version. You get to choose. Some English speakers, for example, choose not to say "I'm good" when how are you? I'm good. I'm well. I'm fine. I'm okay. And they know that the grammar says this, and they choose to do what they want. Some people have no idea. But the knowledge and the awareness is powerful. So absolutely pay attention to that. Great question. The habits, we continue. The fourth one of this list is to learn to actively practice filler words and filler sounds in Hebrew. That's a huge, a way to support or enhance all of the other things, the grammar that you're learning, the pronunciation that you're practicing, the vocabulary that you're building. If in between all those words you get these, like in English, which some people do, they'll speak Hebrew, and then they insert a like or a where you're like, wait, oh, okay, now I see where you're from. If you can say or aim or az, no, die, yo, there's all these words that kind of come to mind, at least for immediately. And if you can start to react in Hebrew, ipa, opa, oop, oof, these words that you kind of hear from foreigners that are not actually English. Again, I know not everyone here is a native English speaker, but the examples I'm giving here are just from English, just to show a comparison. We want to get a sense of what it's like to hurt yourself. What if you hit your hand or like stub your toe? In Hebrew, what would you say? Ai, oof, op, ouch. There's all these words, onomatopoeias or interjections, better word. And these are things that I would definitely suggest working into your language. They just play into the character more than anything. The fifth one in the habit tips is to prepare the utterances, the first thing that you're going to say and the last thing that you're going to say. I don't mean that you have to read this as a script. What I mean is think about the beginnings of your conversations and the ends of your conversations. Think about them in English and in your native language. What are some things you tend to say when you meet someone for the first time? Consider the relationship. If you're talking to someone at a supermarket, it might be different than someone that you just are best friends with. And the words that we choose are often really similar. Greeting people, asking them how they're doing, responding in a way that's natural is huge. And then maybe the more important is the ending. How do you have this perfect conversation, everyone understood each other, you're speaking Hebrew the whole time, and then you have this awkward, okay, shalom, lehitraot, is that right? You're asking questions, it's not the time for it. Practice it, get into it, and understand that we want to smoothly just exit, if possible. This is just a tip, of course, but always nice to know that you can kind of slide into the conversation and then slide out too and not feel like it has to be really stilted. The equivalent, Janet, the equivalent of in Hebrew is or em. בסדר, טוב. No? As so if you can hear that, right? They don't have an or an sound in Hebrew. That vowel doesn't exist. So we're kind of living in this world of tov, okay. So keep those in mind. Keep the beginnings and the endings in mind. Understand that we're practicing words like these. We're going to ask the right questions to the right people, and just develop a clearer awareness of our own use of language. We keep going. 10 more tips here. We're already through 10, believe it or not. These next 5 are going to be general tips about language learning, but we can apply them to Hebrew and ask questions if you need. The first one here, number 11, is that every conversation should be an opportunity to learn. Even speaking with Israelis in English, if someone's speaking to you with an accent, they're Israeli, they're speaking English, that's a chance. Enjoy from the weekend came from a conversation with an Israeli in English. And I was like, just constantly thinking about how I can make connections, why this person is speaking that way. And even if I learn one word that's new, or I confirm one thing that I knew, that is also an important thing. Notice that this is an aside, but recently I've been kind of visualizing Hebrew and other languages as kind of like when I first start off as blurred text on a page. And every time that I confirm something, a verb tense or a pronunciation, that text kind of gets a little bit darker, more bold on the page for me, maybe even gets bigger. And what I'm looking for are certain words and certain phrases that I've said so many times that there's this big, bold image on my page where I can see that written, and that's not going away. That's where I've now entered this kind of what I consider permanent memory, or unbelievably difficult to lose that. Think about really common phrases that you know in Hebrew that you just couldn't imagine forgetting because you just say it every single day or every single conversation. So when it comes to these opportunities to learn, we should be trying to solidify everything. And that's not just learning new things, but also confirming what we already know. The second one is view the conversation as a time to perform. This might be a little controversial for some of you guys, but here's how I feel about it. I think that when we get into a foreign language conversation, we're not really prepared for that stressful, anxiety-ridden experience when we first start. We're often prepared by reading and writing and doing activities and filling in the blanks, conjugating verbs, solidifying our vocab before we even get into the conversation. My technique instead is to feel like this conversation is a chance to be on a stage. Spotlight's on you, everything you say is recorded, everyone's going to hear you, and that doesn't mean you can't mess up. But it does mean that as you're practicing and as you're training, we might want to consider that nervous feeling. Just like you might in a piano recital or a play. You know your stuff, you know your lines, but hey, it's showtime. It's game night. Whatever the analogy, you might get nervous. You might feel a little bit differently than you did by yourself in your room, practicing with a book. You might not hear or understand the person very well, and so that you have to be a little bit more on your toes, is what I'm trying to say. So view it as a time to perform. Don't feel like that has to be so much more stressful, but understand that nerves might come up and people might give you different energies, and you might feel like it's not the same as it was in the classroom. I was doing really well, and then I came here, and then they started to ask me questions that I didn't understand, and so definitely important to consider. I'll keep going here. I want to answer all the questions. Keep them coming in. I'm not trying to ignore them, but I do want to get through all the tips. So please keep the questions coming. I left time for that at the end, and they're always appreciated. So number 3 for the general tips here, this is number 13, is to prepare to be wrong and make mistakes often. I think this is hard it's hard for me. I'm admittedly a perfectionist, or at least I was, when it comes to languages. I'll be the first person to say that I'm not talking to anybody until I know that it's perfect. Or I'm not going to say that phrase until I've heard another native speaker say it, or I've heard it in a show, or I've heard it somewhere confirmed 3 times, and then I'll use it. So that's something that I need to work on too, is that if I'm working with this mentor, this partner, and I know that they have my back and they're going to help me, I'm going to try it. I'm going to try to say it. I'm going to put it together. But what I'm not going to do is leave that alone. I'm going to say, okay, I tried it, but was that right? Was that even close? Give me some feedback. And if you know that you're going to get some feedback no matter what, if you know that that's going to happen, then you're probably more likely to offer the mistake or try, because you might be right. You might have just confirmed a doubt, and that is so powerful. You tried something you had no idea about and it was correct. What a good feeling. So keep that in mind. Really try to make mistakes with the right people and in the right environments. Again, if you're performing and you're in that mode where you're not really practicing, don't make every mistake possible. Consider the environment here. Number 4 of this list, number 14 total, is if the listener fits certain requirements. For example, this is maybe we're talking about the difference between performing with random people and just in general in life, and this practice mentor, friend, person who you can trust, who you're asking questions to. If the listener fits the certain requirements, that they're a native speaker, they know your native language maybe, they're trustworthy, they're not a child. I mean, not that you shouldn't ask kids. Kids are great, and they're honest, but they don't always have the right understanding of the language. They might be good to ask just to confirm. Are kids still talking like adults? What about a teenager? This is important too. Consider, hey, bonus tip, consider the age, gender, social class, all these things, background, heritage of the person as well. And the last one of this general tip list is, when it comes to, so we had a question a moment ago about apps and which apps to learn with. Duolingo is a great way to get to a high beginner level of vocabulary. It won't help you with speaking. There's no way to help with pronunciation, but it will help you with word choice. Certain apps, I use Pealim or Morphix for translations, Reverso Context for translation as well. Every time I'm looking up a word, I use that. So if I'm reading a text or listening to a song, I put the word or words into Reverso or Morphix, and just kind of have a selection of translation services. But also, along the lines of apps, I would say that it's not just language learning apps you should be dealing with. This is the tip as well, you should use content that you already enjoy and already use in your native language. So maybe that is a language app and you like to go through the process and do the puzzle. But oftentimes you could gain just general awareness from audiobooks or YouTube series, YouTube videos, generally shows that are on TV that are already also copied onto YouTube, Spotify to listen to new music. I think that if you're only using one app to learn a language, you're probably going to be extremely limited with your results. You're going to get, that you get man and woman, you get orange and bread, and then you have the man eats the orange and the woman eats the bread. Sometimes the orange eats the bread, and you realize, what am I doing? What am I doing here? So understand that everything is, if you're doing the passive type learning where you're listening and not actually speaking, we just want to confirm things. We want to verify translations, and that said, we should also use apps or programs where you can actually talk. And there aren't very many of those. So refer back to the previous tips of finding someone you can trust. I personally have conversation partners. Maybe some of you are watching right now. I have Hebrew coaches, Ulpan teacher. Every so often I'll go through these processes where I'm just confirming things. I'm not perfect. I'm getting better every week. I'm actively practicing still, Hebrew in particular. And even coaches need coaches. So don't feel like you have, you have too many apps. There's just not too many if you're using all of them for a specific purpose. But do things you enjoy. Don't read the newspaper in Hebrew if you don't read the newspaper in your native language. Also, newspapers in Hebrew are really difficult to read, so generally speaking, it's a challenge. So I suggest, again, personally, culturally, to listen to music on Spotify. You can find Israel Top Hits of 2019. You can do things like that. And in that way, you also connect to people too, because you end up using jargon, call it slang. You end up using these idiomatic expressions, references to pop culture. That is something that people cannot take away from you. And they will have no idea how you figured that out if you haven't lived in Israel or spent a lot of time with Israelis. So huge to use pop culture and all those things to your advantage. Okay. Jana asks, do you recommend watching Israeli movies or TV series with or without English subtitles? Don't make it too difficult for yourself. Some people think that watching with subtitles is like cheating, when it's a tool. It's an absolute tool. I think you should watch it with some subtitles. If you can watch it with Hebrew subtitles, that's great. I think that there's an advantage to doing both, though. I watch Hebrew audio with English subtitles. Sometimes I even watch English audio with Hebrew subtitles. You know what I mean? So you do it the opposite way. There's a tip for you as well. What that does is it lets you stop working on your listening comprehension, because you can hear in English, many of you, if you can understand me, you can hear in English with a lot less brain power, and then read and make the connections and say, oh, that's how they're translating that? Huh, all right, I didn't know that word. Interesting. The show Fauda is great. Aaron is a fantastic suggestion. I watch Shoter Tov. I watch what is the show, Mirdaf, The Chase, which is a trivia show. Oh, it's great. I'm a big fan of Mirdaf. There's Shtizel, if you guys have seen Shtizel. Stephanie, you got right as I was saying that. The only thing about Shtizel is, you guys know, you might not know, there is a particular background of the cast members, or at least the characters that they're portraying, to give off a little bit more of a religious tone, and Ashkenazi in particular. So consider that. Make sure that you know that the shows are based in a certain area or portraying a certain people. Also, Streetwise Hebrew, yes. If you guys didn't hear the promotion from Streetwise Hebrew and Miftaim, go back and listen to the last few episodes. Streetwise Hebrew is fantastic. It is my favorite podcast for Hebrew learning. It's colloquial expressions. It's breakdowns in English. Guy Sharet, he's the man. He just brings the most interesting and fun aspects of the language to a short and digestible podcast. And if you're not listening to Streetwise Hebrew, you're crazy. What are you doing here? But I forgot that was a given. I didn't even have to tell you that. I thought that we were all listening to Streetwise Hebrew, right? Are we not? Fantastic. 5 more tips here about language, and specifically Hebrew tips here. And we'll go back to some questions, and I'll share with you guys another way that we can connect even more. Specific tips in Hebrew that you might not realize. This first tip has to do with linking words together. Whenever someone asks you if you speak Hebrew, אתה מדבר עברית? את מדברת עברית? The answer to this question is really important, but the tip here has to do with the linking of the words ani and medaber. Or in that case, any word that happens to be in this PL binyan. If you're not familiar with the verbs, it's the verbs that start with mem. In most cases, mem plus the shorish. So medaber, in this case, when I say ani medaber, I end up stopping the M and then beginning with the D. I don't put a vowel between the mem and the dalet. So ani medaber, you can type this in here too. Ani medaber becomes ani medaber. Something like this. Again, this is just a random but useful tip to understand how linking works in Hebrew. Would you ever think to do this? Maybe you hear it and you're like, oh yeah, that makes so much sense. But I've never done that before. אני מדבר. Someone says to me, אתה מדבר עברית? כן, אני מדבר. אני מדבר. לא שוטף, אבל אני מדבר טוב. אני מדבר. אני מתקן. אני מבשל. Any word in that binyan will also work. מבשל, מתקן. Hundreds. So use that connection to make yourself sound even more native. This linking thing is part of the descriptive pronunciation, going back to those terms. The second tip for the specific Hebrew nuance is the words et and ha. If you haven't seen the video on et ha, or if you're not familiar with this, et is a particle after a direct object, before direct objects of a verb. So we'll say this mostly before the word the, and often it's followed by the word ha. In fact, it has to be et ha, if it's not a proper name. So phrases that you can memorize is to say tavili et ha. Tavilita as one word. So that's the tip here. So tavili et ha, tavili, I'm writing these for you as well. Tavili et ha becomes tavilita. Again, I can't really write it out. I'm missing certain sounds here, but the idea is you get tavili et ha. תביא לי את המים, בבקשה. תביא לי את הפלאפון שלי. תביא לי. Bring me, or hand me, or pass me. You can also say תביר לי איתה, also just using a resh, which makes it complicated. אפשר את ה, we use often to say, hey, is it possible for you to give me that? Right? אפשר את המים, we would say, אפשרת. I'm just going to write it like this. There are no rules with Hebrew, but if you guys can follow this, I can write it in English and transliterate it, but you get the idea. אפשרת את הבקבוק, אפשרת את ה, I'm just removing the sound, really, but pushing these together is huge and will make you sound more native. It's just as simple as that. אפשרת, תביא לי את ה, אני מדבר, תביא לי את ה. Already getting there. The third one, these are the filler words. I didn't realize I was going to give you these later on, but there's 5 words that you guys should be saying all the time. If you're not using these words, what is wrong with you? The words are nu, which I guess you could spell in lots of different ways. Dai, nu, yo, I think yo is spelled with yo, yud, vav, aleph. I don't even know how some of these words are spelled because I don't always see them. They're not really words. They're kind of these like, you guys can help me out here. This is where I ask questions to you guys. Maybe you guys know. Nu, dai, yo, nu. As maybe something like this. As בסדר, טוב, nu, dai, no. These types of words that you're thinking about filler words and trying to actively work them in, these are the ones. If you can't think of, let's say you forgot someone's name. Baruch Hashem. Yo, ma Hashem. Nu. And you're thinking to yourself, and you're like, oh, how Israeli does that sound when someone's just like racking their brain for the answer? Yo, nu. I find that to be a little bit more of a character thing, but super Israeli. If you want to use it, it's there. Number 4, and the 19th of 20, is here are the sounds that English speakers, importantly, English speakers from the United States and North America in general, tend to mess up the most. The sounds are taf and tet, and you may have seen all these in other videos. We made the videos because of this list. Some of them are not on the list. But generally speaking, we're talking about taf and tet, we're talking about dalet, we're talking about resh, of course. We're talking about vowels o. I'm writing them in Hebrew, but you can get the idea. So weird to write these out this way, but these are the sounds in particular. There might be more than one sound, as we talked about at the beginning, but these are the letters that most of the time, if you're like, I have no idea where to start, these letters are the ones that will tend to be mispronounced in general. Taf and tet are not the same as T in every situation. In English, we have 7 different pronunciations of T. Taf and tet are always pronounced the same, but different, from English at least. Dalet, similar. Taf and dalet are the same sound, voice and voiceless being the only difference. Even at the end of a word, od, ot, you might hear them differently than English. And the 5th one and last one, a little fun tip for you guys. For anyone struggling with the word Yerushalayim. Yerushalayim, the tip is that you can use the word Yerushalayim because of the placement of the U sound. Try to follow this. This is not a typo. I'm just putting an aleph in its place. Yerushalayim. So, for example, the tip is to remove the resh To avoid pronouncing it Yeru, Yerushalayim, Yehu, 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 Yerushalayim. You don't really hear much of a resh in between the yud and the shin and the vav. So Yehu, Yehu, Yerushalayim. I'll write it in English here so you can see what I'm talking about. Yerushalayim kind of sounds to changes to Yerushalayim. Try it. See if you can hear the difference. If you're using an R sound, Yeru, this is going to help a ton. And if you're using a flipped R or a regular resh, you might not have an issue with this anyway. Yerushalayim, Yehu, Yehu. Whoa! Like, I can remove a sound completely, and that's all it is. So really a lot of tips going on here, but important in general. So we have tips on specific sounds, we have tips on general practice, habits to form, what to ask, who to ask, what things to focus on and what things to not really focus on, what resources to use, which podcasts, which videos and apps we can also use. But remember that we want to speak as well, use this stuff, and we have to be doing all these things, even just a little bit. Schedule the time in, meet with your partners, your language partners or friends for the purposes of practicing, but really understand what the goals are. And I want to answer a few questions here, but before I do that, I want to talk to you guys about a way that I want to connect with you more. I want to introduce you to a new program, basically. The idea, in the last few years, I've been sharing videos on YouTube and Facebook here. We've been making video courses. If you haven't checked out the video course, we also did a special promotion with Streetwise Hebrew. If you listen to their podcast, you'll see that there's a special promotion for our video course. We do private coaching. Well, I say we, I mean I, in the private coaching realm. But I want to be able to reach more people. I want to be able to do more. I want to connect with you guys more, especially the ones who are watching this. If you're here, you're you're trying to practice more, I want to give you an opportunity to do so. So the new service is starting this week. We're going to be starting a new series called I Now Pronounce You, a Hebrew Speaker. I Now Pronounce You, a Hebrew Speaker, which is the name of the video course as well, but this is going to be a monthly series where we, and I personally go live with you every single week, just like this. We can ask questions. You won't be able to be seen or heard, but you can comment questions just as well, and hopefully you feel as included as possible here. We have a few different options. In fact, I'm going to write right now the link to the options in the chat so you can see this, but I'll explain them to you as well. The idea of the Hebrew club or Hebrew group, I Now Pronounce You, is to have a little bit more consistent practice. And you have three different options. The first option is just testing the mayim. If you go to that page, testing the mayim, if you guys are just curious about it, is these are all monthly programs. Monthly, it's $19 for a whole month, but you get access to 1 full hour live every month, just like this, where you get to talk to me, you get to ask your own questions, and generally get support with your Hebrew practice. Just test it out, see what you think. If you're ready to take the next level, then you can be here for the mesibah, here for the party. And if you're here for the mesibah, then you get a weekly live. Every single week, we're going to go live. We might even break it up into 2 half-an-hour lessons so that we can work with the time zones. All of the recordings, just like this one, will be held on the page so that you can see them afterwards. They're not going to disappear on you. You might even be able to download them and watch them on your own. The here for the mesibah is $49 for the entire month, and also gives you access to a private Facebook group that we're going to use to communicate every day, as often as you guys would like. But we'll also transmit the lives through those pages. And finally, if you're into it, if you're ready for it, if you want to work with me in a small group or one-on-one, you can be part of the VIP group, the exclusivos that are working with me, not only in the Facebook group, but also in a private messaging or WhatsApp group. It might not be WhatsApp, but likely. So this is the option for VIP is $129 a month. It's something that is, again, unlimited. You can ask any questions. You can in the WhatsApp group we exchange audio and text messages, which is the big bonus. So you can be heard. You can hear your pronunciation. We can actually give you feedback, and you can fill in, check off the boxes of I now have a mentor. I did all the things, and I'm ready to go forward. If you'd like as well, there's also, if you scroll down on the bottom of the page, there's annual options. You save a little bit of money, 10% or 11% on some of them, and in one annual payment, and that's just to get going for the entire year. This is the year. This is your year and a chance to get ahead, because I wanted to, talk to you about the tips and the general practice and ways to get ahead, but sometimes the tips are just tips. But if you have no actionable plan, no one to actually go after and apply these techniques to, then it's even harder than just figuring out tips and what to do. So we have a community. It's not just me. It's a community of other learners that are in your same situation. Wonderful people like you guys who are watching right now, who are commenting on other people's questions and chats. And so we want that feeling of support. You want to know that you have someone that you can ask questions to, that you can double check if you're doing the right things a month later, 2 months later down the road. And this is a chance for us to really connect. Because this year, for me at least, I'm trying to really pare down a little bit more all the things that I seem to be doing, and just connect and have a little bit more intimacy with you. I want to connect with you. Maybe we haven't met yet. I want to meet you in person, but I know that's not possible for everybody. But these lives are the best way I have that I know to connect, and we're going to do that every single week for the foreseeable future. What do you guys think? If you're ready to sign up now, you can go to the link. It's linguistics.podia.com/Hebrew group. Linguistics.podia.com/Hebrew group. Linguistics is the name of this business. Linguistics. Mivtaim is the facet that deals with Hebrew. Podia is the host. Podia is the place where you'll see the videos. We'll also post the videos after the fact on that platform. Just in case you don't like to go to Facebook and watch the videos here, you'll have another place that you can watch them too, and practice on your own. So, if there's any questions about this, please let me know. I'll send you guys another message about this if you're interested. And just to add a little bit of a special flavor and maybe give you something to get in there faster with, I'm going to send you, if you sign up before the end of tonight. Today is Sunday, January 12th. It's almost 11 a.m. in California. I know it's kind of late night. Maybe I'll give you to tomorrow. How about this? If you sign up by Monday at midnight, so almost Tuesday, tomorrow night, Monday evening, I'm going to send you a special bonus. It's going to be a breakdown of all the Hebrew vowel sounds with my audio walking you through it. It's about an hour long of content, an hour's worth of content. Of me talking to you about Hebrew words. There's lists of vocabulary. There's examples of different vowel sounds. There's only 5 vowel sounds, but we break it down for you. It's a great way to get into things, but it's just a bonus. The real important stuff is the meeting every single week, and the connection, the commitment that we're going to show as we start this year off. So, what do you guys think? Let me know if you have any questions or comments. The Hebrew group, the Miftaim, I now pronounce you a Hebrew speaker group, will be a separate Facebook group, not this page. It'll be a group, like a closed group, that you'll be able to access whenever, and comment and questions whenever you like. So I'm happy to offer that to you guys. The link is in the comment here. And I'll even link the different options too if you'd like to meet for the testing the Mayim, if you'd like to be here for the Mesibah, or if you're a VIP. If you can't see the link here, let me know. I'll like it just to make it show up again. I don't know if that helps. But it is a pleasure. Honestly, I'm so happy to be here. I want to talk to you guys for another hour, and I'm going to answer questions here now. If you guys have any questions that I missed, you can re-comment them, or let me go back through them right now and answer them as best I can. So stay here, stick around. I'm still here for a few more minutes if you have any more questions about the series, about the monthly series, or about Hebrew in general. Let's see. Okay. Just going back through here. Let's see if I can use this maybe better on the phone. talking to each other. Apps. Okay, so Beverly's a big proponent of Duolingo, but uses other things as well. Nice. So supplement Duolingo for sure, but it's not a bad app. It is, it's a good place to start. Emma says, I like devotion music with Spanish text. There's a lot of that on YouTube. Oh, that's amazing. Music is a perfect way to get into things, especially if it's something that you enjoy. Devotion music is beautiful. Some of the most beautiful songs, and in Hebrew as well. You can use Spanish text in Hebrew. Some of the Spanish sounds are actually the same as Hebrew, so you have a huge advantage there too. Ramzor. Aaron, is that a show name? Ramzor? Imagine so. Or just the word, Ramzor. Got most of the questions otherwise. Let's see. Okay. Horaima. Looking for a conversation in English with a Hebrew speaker. I now recall the friend's guest book where people who stayed at his home write something. Israeli girls wrote, thank you about X. I got that immediately. Okay. So trying to use other friends and people to get ahead. And thank you about. I like that. So that's a specific mistake I see that you're going back to. Awesome. Going back into it. I think we get most of them. So Astrid early on asks, are there rules for when to use taf or tet, shin, samech, means sin or samech, chet or chaf? Yes, there are rules. There are patterns. I don't like the word rules, but patterns for sure. So Astrid, if you're still here with us, or if you are still curious, anybody else, taf or tet have clear patterns, and mostly they come in the differences between their the words that you're choosing. So word choice here. If you have a borrowed word, most of us maybe know this, but tet is usually the choice that we use. So internet, startup, università, Trump. You'll use different names or words. You'll have tet almost all the time. I can't think of an example where taf is used in a foreign borrowed word. Taf is, however, used always with feminine plurals, ot or ut, right? Or it, actually, very common to end words with those suffixes. It, like ivrit, anglit, sinit, finit, any of the words that are languages. Any abstract noun, savlanut, you'll have this ut sound always with a taf, and of course feminine nouns or verbs, banot, ochlot, gvinot, shonot, which is actually a sentence. All those will have tafs at the end. In many cases, you're just also looking for shorashim, the roots of the words. There are some words that end with ot that are ending with tet because they are, that's the last letter of the shoresh. So be careful of that too and understand the inherent uses of the roots, the shorashim. Sin or samich, same deal. The samich tends to be the one we use for borrowed words. So startup, Instagram, we'll use samich. Sin is lesser used, but you'll definitely see that with certain verbs and nouns that have to do with the inherent meaning and the inherent root. Chet and chaf also have more to do with the environment, beginning, middle, or end. We know that if a chet is at the end of a word, it's often with the the patach underneath it. So you have this each, or what's an example? Ruach, for example. So if you see that as a chet, if you know that the vowel is ach before it, oftentimes that's a chet at the end. Sameach, another example. So chet is a big one at the end of a word. Because chaf can also be kaf, we see that there's specific uses where we don't see them in certain positions. For example, at the beginning of a word, it's less common to hear a chaf at the beginning. You might hear it as a K sound. So kol hazman, kol hatalmidim, kol. But if it's between vowel sounds, lechol, lechulam, we'll definitely hear that as a chaf. So know that a K sound can change to a chaf, but that might not mean that it's a chet. Right? So little patterns in here, and this is what we want to be able to focus on and write down, take notes on. When do we see these letters? In what position? For example, we rarely ever see a chaf at the end of a word pronounced like a K, like a kaf. It just doesn't happen. There are always these open fe, chaf, and sofit letters, so you won't see that as much. And like we said, chet has its own little thing going on with vowels. They're good questions and a lot of patterns to pick up on. Let's see. Dan says, one thing I learned recently was that the Eastern European imports to Israel don't necessarily follow what I just said. I don't know what I just said about that, but it was probably something earlier on, which could be anything. Dan, if you're still here, let me know what you meant about the Eastern Europeans. But in general, you're right. I mean, different language backgrounds, different heritages are going to bring in different influences. And it's not just because it's been that way for a long time. Unfortunately, it doesn't mean that it's how it's going to be in the next 10 years or 20 or 50. So we want to understand that as well. And people are going to bring in accents. We love accents. Accents are great. Language evolution is so interesting, at least to me. I know that it is to you as well. But you're going to see the waves of immigration and different people and different speakers and age and slang and pop culture all affecting the language. It's not just one thing. It's like saying your hair comes from your mother's father, right? Maybe you thought that or you believe that, but it's not necessarily a myth as much as it is missing a lot of information. There's more to the picture. There's other genetic things, or talking about language genetics, that are playing a role. So consider that and know that who you're speaking to might be relevant to this whole practice. And you know what? My conversation partner is from Yemen, or is from a specific background where they kind of speak in a different way, and that's important. Lechulam, okay, lechulam, Emma. Is that just a general question? Did I miss something? Okay, Dan, thank you for clarifying. The ha sound, a Sabra from Tel Aviv told you that the ha is pronounced et ha. Generally speaking, yeah, you should know that this is, again, maybe a descriptive versus a prescriptive thing. The whole hey pronunciation, I'll talk about this for a second. Heys in Hebrew are generally weaker than our English H's, slightly. You can barely hear them as audible breath. And so the eta, ta thing is often happening because they're not even pronouncing it strong anyway. One tip or test that you can do if you want to ask an native Israeli speaker to say the letter hey. Okay. Well, either way, I'm just confirming that too. Dan says no, they often don't use it. Important. So it's not that they don't use it, it's just that it's such a weak sound we can barely hear it. And so we push it together when it comes to linking words together. You should consider heys as whatever the next vowel is. Not necessarily as, again, there's silent letters for all intents and purposes for the descriptive pronunciation, but you can call them optional if that helps you. They are silent to our ears, but the tip was also to ask an Israeli to say the letter hey, and then say the English letter A, the first letter of our alphabet, and see if you can hear a difference. Usually you can't. Important. So this has been so fun. I mean, honestly, this is like such a fun thing to be able to share with you guys. Susan says, I think you're a great teacher. I would really love to know more about your program. Fantastic. Of course, I can talk about it for a few minutes if you guys want to stick around. Janet says, will the live weekly lessons be at the same time as today? They could be. It kind of depends on who signs up and where they live. I want to be respectful of everybody. This seems to be a nice time, Sunday in the evening if you live in Europe or Israel, and Sunday in the morning if you live in the States, or early afternoon if you live on this side of the ocean. But I was thinking about doing 2 30-minute lessons, let's say on like a Thursday and a Sunday. But I will absolutely consider everyone's preferences, and try to do the best I can to accommodate. This is the hardest thing about working with Israelis from California. 10 hours apart, but really, really something we can do. So I'll talk a few more minutes about the program, and you guys want to stick around and listen, I'm happy. I'll stay here about 5 more minutes and tell you about anything you need to know. Otherwise, it was such a pleasure to talk with you guys today and share some tips, some of my best tips that I still use today. I'm going to go talk with my Hebrew conversation partner in like an hour, and the techniques are there. You can follow these and really get ahead, but if you're just lost and have no idea, we have a place to start. So the weekly programs, I'll tell you, because I've been doing this in other languages. Hebrew, this is the first time I'm doing it in Hebrew this month. And if you have specific questions about it, Susan, let me know. But the general idea is we're trying to have fun with the language. We're trying to give you feedback as much as possible and try to let you ask questions to a community that actually has some answers. So we often start the lessons with a fun tip of the day. Quick 5-minute thing that you can work into your practice. Something along the lines of אני מדבר or תביא. These are fun tips that you can implement immediately, especially if you live in Israel or live in a Hebrew-speaking community. And then we get into the main focus of the lesson, which we're going to have themes. Every month is going to have a different theme. So the series for this month, we're talking about creating your identity. So each of the lives is going to be focused on some way to build your identity. It might not be the same as mine. It might not be the same as everyone in the group, but you should know what that is. Where are you from? Where do you want to sound like you're from? What is your end goal as far as that character that we're developing? And how can we get there faster? What's the best way to do that? We'll have the option to post questions throughout the week on the Facebook group, but the VIP group, the WhatsApp group, is actually the most difficult to comprehend. So I'll talk for a moment about that. WhatsApp or similar messaging apps are fantastic for language practice because you can record your voice and therefore share your voice with other people. If you are the kind of person who's just like stuck in the middle of Kansas or Virginia or something and don't have a community of people to speak with, or if you're missing that kind of connection, the WhatsApp group is a great place to just get language out, to do the active speaking, and also to get feedback at the same time. Every day I send out a sentence. This is how I start getting the ball rolling. I write a sentence in Hebrew, and the idea is for everyone to record their voice. We're going to have small groups in these, so no more than 3 or 4 people per group. We'll try to match them up with the right levels. But the idea is to record your voice and hear what it sounds like. And then we give you feedback on that, but that's just to get things started. You have an open channel to ask any questions you want. It's like office hours plus ulpan teacher plus general motivation and coaching. So if you have time and if you have the availability and the drive, I'm with you. Let's do this, we'll practice. But you can also just test out the mayim. Mayim means water, by the way. Testing out the mayim. You can be here for the mesibah and really get into the practice every single week. But I'll let you guys decide what the best option is for you. And it's really, really going to be dependent on who joins. So it really is, kind of fun to go through, but the group will change inevitably every single month. So I want to have that flexibility also. It's not just some cookie cutter course or like put together all these things and I'm ready to present it. I do have it planned out, but I anticipate having to change a little bit. So the link again is this one right here, linguistics.podia.com/Hebrew group. And I just want to help you guys get ahead. This is the best way I can think to do it. My intentions are good. You know that. If anyone's seen a video of mine, you hopefully can tell the style and the way that I have to share. I want to find the right connections. I want to find the right techniques that you can employ that are not such a big change to your life, because it doesn't have to be. It can be something you work into your daily activities, your daily practice without even realizing it. It's like automatically investing money every month setting that up where you just kind of look in your progress after 6 months or a year and you say, oh my goodness, that is incredible. I didn't even know that word last year or last month. I kept saying it like this until today I realized it was ani mtaken, ani mdaber, ani. So all those connections they're just little things that kind of move you forward. And so I want that for you guys. So if there's no other questions, thank you so much for being here. I will let you go for today. And we will look forward to seeing you. Again, I want to offer you this bonus if you sign up before Monday night. That's January 13th. And if you get in there, the first live will be this week. It will either be on Thursday or next Sunday, which will be, I guess, next week, but it'll be soon. We'll get started immediately, and there still will be a full month's worth of lessons. So we'll still put in, what I want to do is 4 hours each month. So we'll still have the whole time. I'm just going to fit it in as much as I can before the end of January, and then we'll start every week in February and so on. Dan, for anyone wondering, I took private lessons with Ruben. Oh, nice. Thanks for the love, Dan. I appreciate it. And yeah, I hope you guys can feel the same way. Janet asks, and we can switch levels at any time? Yes. Oh, you mean like from Mayim to Mesiba to VIP? Absolutely. You can switch levels, and if you feel like it's it's not enough, or if it's too much, we can just we can change it up for you too. And definitely consider I will definitely consider the levels. So you're not going to be in a WhatsApp group, for example, with a complete beginner if you're speaking fluent Hebrew. Carmen, ma'anyanim, toda rabba lach. Thank you so much. Stefania, where are you from? I imagine you're a Spanish speaker. If it's, she asks, is this also for people who are not English native speakers? Because I'm not. Yes, I am not only an English speaker. I speak Spanish, I speak Italian, I speak Portuguese, I speak Hebrew. And if you fall into one of those categories, ooh, I can help you. Ooh, we're going to use your native language. We're going to connect those things for any language. Even if you're Swedish or Dutch, I still can help as well. Italian, even perfect, even more unique. I like that. So yeah, we can use Italian as a base, and you might even find that we'll have connections that we won't even make with English speakers. So I love that. I would like to have more variety so that we can learn from other nationalities. But I can guarantee that Italian speakers will benefit just as much as English speakers, considering we can make connections with both languages. And if you have questions about these things too, you can email me. I'll write my email address in here if you don't already know it. You can send me a message on this Facebook group. You can, and there's so many ways to get in touch with me these days. I'm an open book, but just in case you have a question, please let me know at Ruben at Linguistics Pro, pronunciation, linguisticspro.com. Send me a message if you have any questions, and you can even preview. You can check out the options on the Podia page. Unfortunately, there's nothing to preview right now, but in general, you'll be able to see. You'll be able to see the packages here on the page. There's some FAQs at the bottom, just in case you're curious. But generally speaking, I think you have a good idea. So, thanks so much for being here, guys. It's been a pleasure. If you're watching again the replay, thanks for getting all the way to this point. And Erev Tov, Laila Tov, Lechulam. If you guys are in Europe or in Israel, have a wonderful night. We'll talk very soon. I hope to see you guys in the program, in the series this month. And if not, we'll have the chance to join later on. But getting in now. It's your time. 2020. Use the tips. Go back and watch this again, and have an excellent year. It started off right. We want to show people how well you speak this language. We do that by making a good first impression, and I want to help you do that. So have a wonderful day, guys. Rest of the day. We'll talk really soon. Yalla. Bye-bye.